Well, good morning and good evening wherever you are. My name is Joe Clarke. This is Mitch Brown. We're here with Advizex. And a big part of what we're talking about today is, well, let's just talk about why we're here, Mitch. Originally, we were going to do a webinar.
Yeah, and I hate webinars because they kind of bore me to death most of the time.
Yeah.
So I figured, let's try something different. Let's just do a fireside chat. Of course, we don't have a fire, so.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing. It's safe, building code and everything. But, So, yeah, so why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Mitch. So what's your role with Advizex? How long you been with Advizex? What's a day in the life for you?
So I've been with Advizex about 6 years now, and I kind of have a couple of hats. I'm an enterprise architect, so day in the life, pre-sales work, doing architecture for customers for enterprise IT solutions. Been in the IT industry a little over 30 years, and the other hat I have is I've got this title that I wear loosely. It's called Director of HP Solutions for Advizex, and my role in that regard is really technical. It's to evaluate HP's technologies that they bring to market, and help us as an organization understand how those integrate into Advizex's go-to-market strategy.
HP it. Okay, yeah. And when you talk about the go-to-market strategy, maybe we could take a couple minutes and just expand on that just a little bit. How does HPE really mesh with the Advizex and then outwards into our customers? Like, how does that mesh outwards from there?
Sure. So first, let me say that there's a bunch of different ways of looking at HP's go-to-market, but one of them is they recognize that our industry is essentially a cloud industry now. But the reality is that cloud isn't about a location. It's about a way of doing IT that's different. And at the end of the day, most organizations are going to have some mix of cloud operations, whether they're local in a private data center or a colo, or they're completely cloud outsourced to an enterprise cloud provider. HP's business model is they kind of really want to be the go-to-market product supplier and integration infrastructure provider for the kind of the private side of a hybrid cloud strategy.
Sure.
Now, what we're about is a little bit different. Let me tell you a story.
Okay.
So, back in the early 90s, I was involved in a bunch of projects. I was a consultant for Digital Corporation. Okay. And I was involved in a bunch of projects that were at the time called business process reengineering. Have you ever heard that phrase?
Yeah, I have.
Do you remember what it is?
Of course I do.
Okay, so, right, not sure I believe you on that one. So that's what it was called when you had an organization that was completely reinventing the way they do their corporate, usually things like accounting, all those things, like Oracle Financials or SAP now.
Sure.
Back in those days, it was coming up to Y2K, and a lot of organizations were saying, well, let's achieve more than just fixing the Y2K
So you mean
problem.
actual digital transformation?
Oh, yeah, kind of.
Actually digital transformation. Like it was paper, now it's digital.
Exactly.
Real digital
We
transformation.
called it business process reengineering.
Right.
And a few years later, it changed names, but it was the same thing. But the interesting thing about that is now we're in this era where everybody we work with has some kind of an ERP solution that they've implemented. Yeah. And what is it doing? It's digitally transforming the business processes of what they do from, say, an accounting perspective, or maybe it's manufacturing, or if it's healthcare, it's an EMR.
Yep.
At the end of the day, these solutions do the same thing. They look at these individual industries and they say, there's ways that we can optimize the processes of getting your work done to make you more efficient, more productive, and allow you to spend your time on the things that are more valuable for the organization.
Okay.
To me, that's the heart of digital transformation. And yet, how ironic is it that here we are in 2019, and the one segment of the industry that is the furthest behind in digital transformation is IT infrastructure itself?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, I think so.
You'd think we'd be the first ones to do this, but it's the last one that gets attention in the companies. First, they do the SAPs and the HANAs and the Oracle Financials, Oracle E-Business Suite, or the EMR. Whatever it is, that's what they do first. And then IT takes a back seat. But yet, the whole cloud transformation is showing us that the industry is screaming for the same kind of productivity gains and digital transformation to IT infrastructure that we've been doing for the last 30 years in general business.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mitch. I mean, so, and how does Advizex really come to the table? What's the method, what's the process by which Advizex is using to sort of, capitalize on this momentum towards making it easier to do IT?
Sure. So we call it our MAT strategy. MAT's an acronym. It stands for Modernize, Automate, and Transform. And it's a foundation-based strategy. So modernize is the foundation, and on that we build automation, and on that we get to the point of achieving the digital transformation goals. But I'm a bit of an English nerd. And I remember my high school English teachers beating into me that when you want to write an essay, you state the end first. You explain the end.
Sure.
And then you go through and build the case. And then, right? So I want to do the same sort of thing.
Okay.
I find it's really easy to go in and start talking about modernize, automate, and transform and get into the weeds of modernization without understanding where we're going.
Sure.
And the end goal is that digital transformation. That's what Advizex does really well, is sit down and work with customers. We have workshops and advisory sessions that we can do to help customers understand what's that end state they need to get to.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we have our lean value assessment, which you're intimately familiar with,
Yeah.
to go in and understand, well, what are the business processes you're doing in IT, and which are the ones that are costing you money, that you do 1 billion times a year, and if you automate it, look at all this time you get back.
Sure.
Right? That's the end goal. Or you look at a healthcare organization. I spent a lot of years working in healthcare infrastructure, and one of the ones that's been the sweet spot is VDI, right?
Yep.
When you can do a TCO analysis. Do I want a VDI infrastructure with thin clients? What's the cost of that versus all the built-in costs of a desktop infrastructure?
Right.
But there's no real money to be saved in that type of a comparison.
That's right.
The money is when you realize that, with VDI, we can do tap and go across clinical rooms, and all of a sudden we can get 20% of the clinician's time back. Mm-hmm. You have a hospital with 5,000 clinicians, and you suddenly said, hey, we can develop this IT solution, and you get 20% of their productive time back. That's where the money is. And that's the same story for IT. There's a lot of processes we do by hand, historically, that we could automate, but because we always have processes that involve a dozen different people, we rarely take the time to step back and look at it from a big picture perspective and understand that even though we're not going to save individual X a lot of time, we're going to save the organization a lot of time.
Sure.
And that has the ramifications long run. So we have to understand where we're going first. And then we ask ourselves, okay, how do we get there? So the keys are understanding where's the value. If you look and you study a process in an organization that they do once a year, mm-hmm. You're probably not going to get a whole lot of value out of that.
Right.
But if you look at something that they're doing 3 times a week, maybe, especially if it involves 8 people.
Sure.
Right? Now the math starts to add up. So we identify what those things are, and then we ask ourselves, how do we get there? Now there's a couple of approaches. We need to build the foundation of modernization, which is saying we need an infrastructure that can be automated. We can write scripts, we can use whatever tools are out there to get that job done. But at the end of the day, that's the goal.
Right.
We want to be able to modernize that. And if pieces can't be automated, that's where we have to upgrade into modern architectures.
Yeah, and in our lean value workshops, where we typically say that is like, where's your APIs?
Yeah.
Like if we can't automate against it, it needs to be modernized, right?
Right.
And that's exactly the first phase that'll get you into the second one.
And then the second part is to automate the elements of the process. Mm-hmm. So if you're deploying a virtual machine, what are the elements? Well, I would have to create the virtual machine. I'd have to deploy an OS. I'd have to apply security practices. I'd have to maybe install a database or whatever. These are all pieces in the process. Automation really kind of refers to each one of those little pieces being scripted and well-defined in terms of clear inputs and outputs.
Yep.
Clearly described, what are the requirements, automate the process of deploying, and then The digital transformation comes when we integrate that into a service catalog and an orchestrator that glues all those pieces together into an automated business process that allows somebody to go into a catalog and say, I need a virtual machine, I need it to have a database, I need these characteristics, and go, and it gets done. That's a simple example, but that's the broad picture of what the MAT strategy is.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And I mean, like, I oftentimes refer to the digital transformation as like what I call the Great Clips effect, which is, I mean, I obviously need a haircut. I don't have one recently, but I go and get my haircut at Great Clips. Why? Not because they have the best salon, not because they have the best stylists, but because I can look on my phone and say, where's the nearest one? How do I get in and out as fast as possible? So they earn my business as a result of digital transformation. The other day I was in the dollar store walking up and down an aisle trying to find something. Pulled out my phone, literally found it on the Walmart app where it was in the store at the Walmart, and walked right across the Walmart, got it, and left. And I was like, and they, again, won my business for no reason other than they had digital transformation. But that's so key, Mitch. And like modernization is only, it's contextual to the time frame that you're in. So it's like you will continually be modernizing things as you go forward, but the digital transformation, like what you're aiming towards, that's like clear revenue show back towards IT injecting revenue into the business instead of the other way.
I did the same thing a couple of days ago at Home Depot because I knew there was something I wanted that I'd seen online, and it told me exactly where to find it in the store and had a map of the store to show me exactly where it is. These are simple things, but think about the personal experience you have interacting with the organization. You know that the commoditization of so much of our world has driven us to a point where it's not about this product being absolutely the best versus this product absolutely being the best. It's the one that actually simplifies and streamlines your life because it's your life.
Right.
Maybe you want to spend more time with your kids. You know what? If you can get all this stuff done in half the time because of these technologies, that's more value than spending 10 hours analyzing, is this product more superior than this product? Now, I know the product vendors hate it when I say that. But, for example, in any modernized infrastructure, you're going to have a virtualization layer.
Sure.
And there's several of them out there. You can make an argument based on all sorts of different use cases, which one is better than the other. But the reality when it comes to transformation, you can use any of these stacks and you can get the job done. But part of the analysis for digital transformation and part of the value chain is saying, look at what I have in my infrastructure today, look at where I need to modernize, look at the skill sets I have, and based on that, what are the right products for me to choose to get me to my digital transformation goals as quickly and as efficiently as possible. It's not about which one's the best. It's about which one gets you to the goal.
That's right. Yeah.
And that is sometimes fraught with the religious arguments.
Yeah, sure.
Right? But we have to navigate that. And the best way to take the sting out of some of those things is showing people how maybe a critical change at some juncture that's going to get you to that end goal quicker actually makes people's lives better. That's really where my role as an HP technologist at Advizex helps me bring the HP technologies in, because I can show people how they unify this strategy, their unified strategy can get them to that end goal quicker and make the lives of administrators better.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's unpack a couple of those then. I know that we've got a couple on the list today that we're gonna rip through here. There's definitely some awesome technology that HPE's come out with that really makes administrator life a lot easier and fraught with a lot less headaches. So let's start with SimpliVity by HPE, and let's start by just having a quick video that overviews the SimpliVity solution, what it looks like, so that you guys can just get right up to speed on it, and then we'll come right back.
Because we run a lot of ski resorts, we're obviously located in a lot of remote areas. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot is local survivability. SimpliVity gave us a much more simple environment to work with, and it consolidated much of our complexity that we had. And so it reduced our footprint within the racks, it reducing the number of cables. Mostly, though, it comes for easing the administrative burden.
We use the features all the time. The ability to roll back to a previous VM very quickly makes it easy to do testing, rollouts, because we know that as long as we take a snapshot before we start that process, it's very quick via the SimpliVity tool to go back to a previous state.
Honestly, I don't even touch the system, outside of maybe having to reboot a virtual desktop every once in a while. I've never rebooted my SimpliVity node. From being able to deploy new virtual desktops on the old system, it could take 5, 10, 15 minutes per desktop. So let's say you're doing 25 or 50, which we would do at a time, you're talking hours. Now with SimpliVity, you're talking 1 or 2 minutes per desktop, so it's definitely sped that up. And where it's really helped me is from a speed standpoint. I have people that they don't call me anymore because they don't have the kind of issues that we had with the older system.
The benefits of the speed were very, very important. And then after we had it installed, we found out there was many other benefits. For example, we didn't think about the savings in consumption of power, the savings in the rack, the savings in time. The savings in time has been outstanding. I mean, I used to spend a better part of my day just looking at vCenter and seeing what was going on. And I always tell people that SimpliVity is set it and forget it. So we have the opportunity now to move on to other projects and help the company more than we ever have.
So that was a quick look at SimpliVity. Mitch, let's talk a little bit about the reality of this product when it's racked, in production, and working for customers. What are some of the things that you really see from a strategy standpoint that this is actually doing to make administrator life easier?
Sure. Well, it does somewhat depend upon the use case. Well, all of these depend on the use case in terms of what's the digital transformation goal.
Sure.
Now, SimpliVity, when you talk to HP, they'll kind of throw a bunch of different value points out. I'll just tell you what I think is the best, because I run into lots of customers that struggle with dealing with remote offices and branch offices. Mm-hmm. It's a huge pain in the rear. And what SimpliVity does is it's a hyperconvergent infrastructure that allows you to tie all those pieces together that you used to have to manage as discrete entities. And we're talking storage, we're talking server, we're talking virtualization, all that sort of stuff. It's all tied together into one package, and the value proposition in the remote office management solution is that it is built with backup and DR as an integral part of its infrastructure. It assumes that you're doing DR. So you could have a SimpliVity infrastructure deployed maybe at a production site somewhere, and then a bunch of these at remote sites. And SimpliVity's management, all of its management, is built into vSphere. Mm-hmm. Or if you're using Hyper-V, it's built into the Hyper-V management tools, SCCM. So if you want to back up a VM, you're doing it within VMware. Mm-hmm. If you want to recover a VM, you do it within VMware. If you want to recover a VM from your remote site to your production site, you do that within VMware in a couple of clicks. And that's the sweet spot, is being able to say, look, you don't need anybody at those remote sites to have a whole lot of in-depth infrastructure knowledge to manage that site, because you essentially have access to all of its data and all of its recovery capabilities anywhere within the federation.
Sure.
So now I can, let's say we have a remote site that has a SimpliVity node on it and it goes down. Well, what's your typical process to recover it? You got to pray that the local site backups actually worked. You got to get somebody out there to fix the hardware and restore the backups.
Yep.
With SimpliVity, you can simply take a node, stick it in your production site where your remote backups already exist. You can basically one-click recover that infrastructure and then ship that fully recovered node back out to that site. And it's done.
Right.
And all you had to do is have somebody at that remote site who knew how to unpack the box and stick the thing in the rack and plug it in, right? So that's a simplicity value proposition. It gets you to that objective. It simplifies operations, makes it easier for you to get the job done and protect the business. Now, you take that model into the data center. Now, is something like SimpliVity going to scale to the point of, say, a 20 terabyte financial database at a Fortune 100 organization that's doing a couple 100,000 IOs per second? Maybe, maybe not. But you think about your kind of your general purpose VM infrastructure, you can probably handle all of that in any infrastructure. How many times have you gone and done an architecture design for a customer that included disaster recovery?
All the time.
How many times have you refreshed that infrastructure, worked on a refresh project for one you did, say, 3 to 5 years ago,
Yeah,
and
it's
found that you had to re-architect the DR because it never got done, never got used, never got tested?
Yeah, that has been a large number of customers
Right.
where it just, it gets set up and said, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to execute DR drills, and it kind of just comes a thing that never happens, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
So here's what it boils down to. When you do those infrastructure designs with DR for any kind of organization, from fairly small ones to large ones, you have this infrastructure to production, infrastructure at DR, you do all this building, and you have this run book, and it's 3 inches thick. That's all the procedures because you don't know if the people who are around know how to execute on it. You have to document everything, and then you have to update it for every change, and that's where the failure occurs because people don't do that.
Sure.
And then they don't test it. So when they get to the crisis mode, they don't know that it's worked until they find out that it doesn't, usually.
Yeah.
So how SimpliVity fixes that problem is because the DR and the backup is built into it as an infrastructure, and it's a couple of clicks to restore a VM at any site in the Federation. Our run book went from 3 inches to a sheet of paper.
Right.
That's a value proposition.
Absolutely.
It's a simple value proposition.
Absolutely.
Now, will it address 100% of every customer's infrastructure? Maybe, maybe not. But that's not the point.
But,
There is a
will
chunk.
virtualization even do that, right?
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
So you look at that low-hanging fruit and you say, man, there's 80% of this infrastructure. I can make the DR problem go away overnight.
Right.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Then you're going to have your outliers, that 10% that needs the love and care and attention of a high-end enterprise application stack. You're going to build the right solution for it. It's really rare that we can actually build solutions that solve our business needs in tier 1 that are appropriate to extend to tier 2 and tier 3.
Right.
And so with SimpliVity, we can really take the problem of the glut off the table and let us spend our time where it most benefits the organization.
Right. And if we take a look inside, the data center walls at your typical production equipment, right? I know that a big thing that HPE is coming out with recently is Synergy, and a lot of what their infrastructure and sort of that next gen blade architecture brings to the table. So can you kind of unpack a little bit about that? And actually, before you do that, we're going to watch this quick video, and that'll give you sort of a high level so Mitch doesn't have to go through it, and try to draw things in the air with his hands. It doesn't work well. So we'll just watch that video, and then we'll come right back to you.
Imagine a future where IT can accelerate application delivery, creating new value instantly and continuously. Where a single platform can deliver infrastructure for any application at the speed of cloud. Where developers can manage hardware like software. HPE is delivering that future today with Synergy. Designed from the ground up to be the world's first truly composable infrastructure. Engineered with fluid resource pools. Of highly secure compute. High-density scalable storage. And ultra-low latency rack-scale fabric. Every resource can be instantly configured and reconfigured according to the needs of each application. Software-defined intelligence drives HPE synergy while increasing operational efficiency. Synergy Composer, powered by HPE OneView, accelerates operations through a single user interface. Template-driven infrastructure provisioning allows instant, reliable application deployment, reducing time spent on common data center processes. Enabling true stateless operations, Synergy Image Streamer works seamlessly with Synergy Composer to automate application deployment, creating a library of images to deploy and update infrastructure with unmatched speed and agility. Managing physical compute like virtual machines. With a robust partner ecosystem, HPE Synergy supports DevOps, automation, and IT management initiatives with a single, unified API that delivers your infrastructure as code. One infrastructure, every workload. This is the future you've been waiting for. Welcome to the age of HPE Synergy.
So that was a quick look at HPE Synergy. So Mitch, let's talk a little bit about it once it's racked, it's in production, it's rocking and rolling. What are some of the things that really differentiate Synergy and things that make it unique?
Yeah, so that is not always the easiest question to answer.
Sure.
And so let me talk about it in terms of the misconceptions that I run into.
Okay.
One of the most common ones is people who try and put Synergy in a position and say, well, which one should I do? Should I do something like Synergy or something like SimpliVity? And the problem is it's comparing apples and oranges, because SimpliVity is really a data center infrastructure platform, and SimpliVity is an integrated solution product. Now, I mean, even HP will tell you that at some point in the future, you'll be able to have a SimpliVity environment that runs on Synergy. Right. So it's not an either or. It's a question of how do you want your infrastructure to be deployed in your data center, and how do you want to manage it? When we look at networking in the data center infrastructure, we could talk for a long time about a classic core edge distribution mechanism or spine leaf, right?
Yep.
And to some degree, this question occurs because of the nature of blade chassis historically. Blade chassis tried to solve the problem of a bazillion network cables and a bazillion fiber channel cables and all this infrastructure. The funny thing is that virtualization and multi-core computing has kind of solved that problem in a completely different way. You know, I've got customers that had data centers with 20 plus racks of servers that they consolidated into 10 racks of blade chassis that now run on half a rack of virtualized servers.
Yeah.
Right? So to some degree, that part of the equation has been solved outside of the blade infrastructure. So now the shift is, why would I want a bladed infrastructure if I've got all those benefits out of virtualization? Now, what SimpliVity has done is HP has kind of changed this philosophy and said, what we want to do is build a unified platform that includes lifecycle management as a part of the platform.
Sure.
So their management tool for infrastructure is called OneView, and we'll get to that. But OneView runs on a little appliance server that's in the blade chassis. It's not one of the blades. It's a specialized module within the blade chassis. I shouldn't say that, within the Synergy frame,
sure,
is the terminology they use. And that OneView instance can manage, at this point, up to 21 frames.
That's a lot of compute then.
That's a lot of compute.
Yeah.
Right? And everything that it does is automating the underlying infrastructure. when we talk about a modern platform, we're talking about things that have API addressing. This infrastructure, from the blades, the power supplies, the networking components, all of them are built as an API ecosystem that is all managed by the OneView as a front end. And OneView itself exposes a REST API that allows all of those elements to be automated. So it does automation, but it also hands that automation off externally so you can do whatever you want with that automation.
Sure.
While at the same time giving you a lot of automation benefits in the package.
Sure.
So now you're looking at a solution where you can do compute, you can do storage, and you can do networking under one pane of glass and one REST API framework. Could you do it another way? Sure. You could do it with rack servers, any kind of networking you want, any kind of storage you want. But what are you going to have to do now? You're going to have to create 3 separate automation structures that you then have to glue together.
Yep.
And your limitations are there going to be the ability of your own organization to develop and maintain the connectional nature of automation between those platforms. With OneView, they're basically taking that off the table by making sure that everything in Synergy can be automated within that one framework.
Okay.
Now then the second thing they do is they template it. So
Templating,
the
sure.
baseline is the idea of templating. Now, this functions within a hyperconverged infrastructure as well as a converged infrastructure. So, for example, Synergy is one of the qualified platforms for VMware Cloud Foundation. Okay, so that's a hyperconverged solution. Using vSAN, you got storage blades, you got compute blades in the Synergy ecosystem.
Sure.
And you create a template that describes, I've got a node that's going to be a vSAN vCloud node. And it's going to need a certain number of drives. Well, I've got pools of drives in the Synergy frame, and the templating can automatically select from the free pool of drives, map them according to their characteristics, and create these templated systems. So it's doing that automation for you. And then it is helping you with the automation of firmware management and all of that sort of stuff, as well as support ecosystem and all that.
And that's one of the advantages I feel that Synergy and OneView have when you run Cloud Foundation on it is today, like that is a solution that can reach down not only from a VMware stack perspective, so you're talking hypervisor drivers managed by VMware Cloud Foundation, but then it reaches out into the Synergy environment via OneView and handles all your firmware maintenance and things under the hood, effectively giving you a giant boop, push my lifecycle management button.
Yeah, technically, I mean that's kind of the long-term goal.
Yep.
Today it's actually more like 2 easy buttons.
Okay, sure,
And the way it basically works is you hit the easy button in OneView and say, I want to upgrade my entire infrastructure to this baseline level of components. And it is integrated with vCenter. So what it can do is it can say, okay, I've got these 6 servers in this cluster I need to remediate because I need to bring them up to the baseline. So it's going to pick one and say, we're going to start here, and it's going to talk to vCenter and say, we're going to tell vCenter to put that thing in maintenance mode, get all of the running VMs off of it, then we're going to upgrade all of its firmware.
Sure.
Then we're going to bring it back out of maintenance mode, or move on to, and now as an IT administrator, you can say, I want that to happen at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I want to come in the morning and check it out with my morning coffee, and it will be done. Most admins I know over the last 20 years do those things by showing up at 2 o'clock in the morning and pushing this button and then pushing this button and then pushing this button.
Yep.
With OneView, the idea is we schedule it. It's pre-tested, it's a defined ecosystem. Where HP has really done an amazing job, especially compared to any of the other competition in the kind of blade space, is they have built and extended that ecosystem to the hybrid model. So if you have a 3-par storage array or a nimble storage array that's back-ending this infrastructure, you can template that too. I can define a template that says, here's a template for a compute node that is going to be attached to a certain vCenter cluster, and it's going to be boot from SAN. Okay? So that template says, every time you deploy this template on a new node, I need to go out to my SAN, I need to carve up a LUN for boot.
Sure.
It's going to carve up that LUN for boot, but then the other thing it's going to do is it's going to assign the existing data store LUNs to that template because it knows they exist. It's going to create a new one for boot and map the existing ones in so that it can be brought up and inserted directly into the VMware cluster automatically. And all the infrastructure you had to do was say, apply that template to that server, go.
Yeah, and that's just absolutely awesome. That's really reducing the jobs to be done of getting infrastructure online and usable in a short amount of time. And if we look at, in fact, let's take a look now at OneView, and let's just do a quick overview of that so you guys can have an idea of what that really looks like, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth, right?
Yep.
So let's take a look at that.
IT innovation is the key to driving digital transformation. But does it feel like your IT infrastructure, tools, and processes are stuck in the past? What if you could automate IT operations to eliminate time-consuming, manual processes? That is exactly what you can do with HPE OneView. Built with software-defined intelligence and a template-based approach, HPE OneView allows you to deploy infrastructure faster while simplifying IT operations and increasing productivity. The HPE OneView Unified API gives you access to a broad partner ecosystem that supports today's traditional environments, as well as cloud-native applications that are driving your business. With a unified API, you can increase productivity by letting developers and IT administrators automate infrastructure deployment and updates without a detailed knowledge of how the underlying hardware works. Instead of automating servers, storage, and networking using complex automation across multiple APIs, you can now automate using a single line of code. The unified API lets you spend less time controlling infrastructure and more time on creating value for the business. A growing list of ISV partners are taking advantage of the unified API in HPE OneView to automate your solutions. With HPE OneView, you can deliver applications and services faster and easier than ever before. The HPE OneView Global Dashboard gives you a unified view of the system health across all of your OneView managed infrastructure. You can monitor all of your HPE infrastructure in one place, and you are just one click away from powerful, device-level lifecycle management. Customize the view of your infrastructure across your data centers around the world, so you see just what you want to see, making it much easier to manage your HPE infrastructure. OneView now supports double the number of servers, over 12,000, and up to 20 appliances. HPE continues to extend platform support so that you can manage your HPE Blade system, ProLiant DL and ML, Apollo, HC380, Synergy, and Superdome X servers, along with 3PAR Store Serve and Store Virtual VSA composable storage, and HPE Virtual Connect networks, offering unified management of your infrastructure across compute, storage, and fabric. One tool, one single interface, one common experience.
So that was a quick look at OneView. So Mitch, I know we just unpacked a lot of it before we watched that video about the integration with Synergy, lifecycle management, a lot of those things. OneView by itself, can you sort of unpack that a little bit for me? What does it provide from an automation perspective and an insight perspective as well?
Sure. So I don't want to go too deep on the insight side. HP is really doing a lot of work to extend the InfoSight infrastructure that they acquired when they purchased Nimble to really their whole product line.
Sure.
And that really would need to be a topic for a different setting.
Sure.
But and OneView is going to be one of the places that is going to find a home, right? So OneView will eventually be your local portal to seeing all the InfoSight insights.
Got it.
But today, that's not entirely there. There are little pieces of it starting to show up. But what OneView is doing in the Synergy infrastructure, HP has been working on doing outside of the bladed type infrastructure for quite some time. With the C7000 blade infrastructure, HP really learned a few valuable lessons. Mainly the thing that in-band management is dangerous, and out-of-band management has to be resilient.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
So the focus that they've come to is that they want to have platforms that are all modernized. right? They all have an API. It's a consistent API. Where they've taken it the next step is they've said with OneView, they want to provide those lifecycle management benefits to all of their platforms through OneView, with the added benefit that once they're connected to OneView, essentially the majority, if not all, of the automation elements that you could do directly to, say, a DL380 server, you could do through OneView.
Awesome.
So for an organization that is really into this digital transformation strategy and wants to build their automation templates and recipes, they can learn how to do that through OneView, knowing that as HP adds products to their portfolio, it's covered.
Sure.
They don't have to develop separate recipes and templates for DL380 or DL580 or server X, Y, and Z or Synergy. They just develop into OneView.
Yeah.
And they can capture that entire ecosystem. And then they can capture the automation that HP is doing within OneView. So instead of me having to write my own templates and then using OneView to deploy them, I just point to a OneView template and say deploy it.
Sure.
Right? So OneView is that automation hub, but it's also the analytics and the information hub. So for an organization that uses mostly HP infrastructure, they would be able to look at OneView and get all the information status about their entire infrastructure. HP used to talk about the sea of sensors idea that they do on their server platforms, lots of telemetry. All of that stuff gets fed back into OneView, and it gets fed to Phone Home through the remote support component of OneView. And all that analytics gets kind of fed back in through that ecosystem. And then you can do your baseline management to make sure your firmware is up to date, controlling drift, right?
Sure.
Right? Because you got a server out there and there was a problem, somebody figured out they needed a firmware update, they dropped a firmware update to fix that problem. Now you go look in OneView and it says, hey, I got this server that's out of baseline.
Sure.
And then you go, now what happens is you're immediately saying, oh, I see that's out of baseline. I need to ask myself, what do I need to do? I either need to create a baseline that defines that as okay for that ecosystem, or I evaluate it and say, where's the next pre-tested OEM-supported baseline that includes that fix that I needed? Now I want to deploy that to the rest of my infrastructure. So I'm avoiding that drift that we know causes all sorts of nightmares down the line.
Sure. Because
this ecosystem is looking at it from that holistic perspective. Now, you get a lot of other interesting benefits with OneView. It is, like I alluded to, the hub for the Phone Home capability called Insight Remote Support. But it also gives you some really interesting benefits on the automation and maturity of hybrid infrastructure, hybrid cloud infrastructure. For example, just one piece, you know how with open source solutions, one of the cool things is you got a bazillion developers who, if they're interested, are all contributing code. Well, as soon as HP started opening this ecosystem, they got the exact same benefit. There's GitHub pages all over the place with people who have done development for templating and for scripting automation for OneView.
Sure.
So you can go out, instead of having to reinvent the wheel, and go find what somebody else invented, and then you can use that, you can contribute to it, you can just adopt it. That's all up to you, right?
Sure.
So you can get those benefits, and then you can enhance it to do what you want to do. So let me give you an example of one of the ones that has been done, that HP has now adopted as something that they support. That's ServiceNow. So there's a ServiceNow connector for OneView. When you install that, let's say you're using ServiceNow's CMDB components. When you install that, every system that OneView touches will now automatically have its CMDB information populated. How much time did that save you, if you think about it?
That never gets done at most companies.
Right.
It just doesn't get done.
And here it's getting done automatically with every change. Now, how about incident management? Server crashes.
You just
somebody over there calls the help
somebody
desk.
put the right asset tag in the ticket, right?
Right.
And you just find out, maybe. There's
But
no correlation.
how did the ticket get created? Somebody who was affected by the change made the call to the help desk. The help desk entered the ticket, not with OneView.
Yeah.
With OneView, it detects an issue, failed power supply, bad fan, system rebooted because of a memory failure, right? Help desk ticket automatically gets generated. And the service ticket to HP automatically gets generated.
And the CMDB gets updated.
And the
with
CMDB
assets.
gets updated
Yeah,
with the
that's
assets.
awesome.
So now, service does its work, the issue is remediated. Let's take a complicated example. What if you had a power supply failure and the ticket was created, and while you're waiting for the engineer to show up, a fan failed in the same server? Two updates to tickets? No, just one. That plugin is resolving the asset information, saying it's the same asset, new problem. It adds it as case history in the same ticket. So now when the service engineer comes out, he says, I now actually have 2 tasks. I have to replace power supply and fan, gets the job done, closes the ticket in ServiceNow. That plugin in ServiceNow goes back down into the infrastructure and acknowledges and clears those trouble items in OneView, and then the next OneView refresh verifies that the problem's been fixed. Again, this is an example of how you can modernize your IT infrastructure quickly by letting the vendor and the open source community help get you from where you are to that end state goal as quickly as you can.
Sure.
Where a few minutes ago we talked about that as a benefit of synergy. What HP is doing with OneView is making that a benefit of HP as an entire OEM ecosystem.
Right, and there's some serious power in the support capabilities they bring, which is a great way for us to segue into the next video, which is let's take a look at OneView and their remote support options that they have.
In the unusual event of a hardware failure, with the new HPE OneView remote support feature, service-related hardware alerts are automatically logged with HPE call centers. When a potential problem is located, the HPE OneView remote support feature develops a support case automatically. There's no need to call HPE support. Any necessary parts are dispatched automatically. When the problem is resolved, the support case is closed automatically. View the status anytime via Insight Online. And you can take advantage of the HPE OneView remote support feature by choosing this option in your settings for the most efficient management of your infrastructure and a more reliable data center. HPE OneView, infrastructure automation with software-defined intelligence and a unified API.
So that was a quick look at OneView remote support. Now, Mitch, you had something to tack onto that, though, right?
Sure. Any infrastructure relies on phone home type capabilities like the remote support provides. But I want to take that and explain how that can be a massive productivity benefit. So again, I'll ask you about your experience. How many times have you struggled with customers who want to know when their support contracts are up?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, and it's a pain for us, right? Because
Yeah.
what do we have to do? We have to go inventory, get all the serial numbers, yada, 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 and we
Yeah.
hope we actually
It's
catch them
rigmarole.
all.
Yeah.
And half the time, the one that falls off the bottom is when somebody calls in and the vendor says, that's out of support, and it's because we missed a server somewhere in the rack in the back room, right? Get it all connected with OneView, with Insight Remote Support, and right there on your dashboard is the contract information. How about you want to call your OEM and you want to get to the right support level, and they ask you, well, what's the serial number? I'm at home.
Sure.
How do I know this? How do I know the service ID? It's all there. If you're using that, that ServiceNow interaction, it's all populated in the service ticket,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
But just the Insight Remote Support populates that information by communicating back and forth with HP. Oh, I see all the serial numbers of everything you have in the ecosystem that's managed by OneView, and here is your current support information. And you can generate a report that just gives you a table of by service end date, here's the contract ID, here's the termination date, boom. You can run that report in a few minutes.
Sure.
Right there. By the way, that's a component that's free.
Yeah.
You don't even have to pay for OneView Advanced for that.
Right.
Right? You just install OneView, monitor your servers, and plug in the Insight Remote Support option, and boom. One of the big headaches that everybody runs into in budget cycles is basically over.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a great way that, I mean, the support has just been reinvented and like just made better just as an inherent function of the HPE platform, right, with OneView. So, I mean, and with that, let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about storage a little bit and about some of the ways that that has changed and evolved. And I know you've been involved with storage since spinning disk like was a thing and got brand new. So do we have videos for this too as well?
So we're not going to put any videos into this.
Okay.
What I'm going to tell you is go look for the videos that HP has published on YouTube under the Nimble category.
Okay.
Now, any of these categories, in fact, most of these videos that we've interspersed actually come from there.
Sure.
There are demos on all of the things I've talked about there, but there is a plethora of stuff on Nimble.
Awesome.
And HP has also introduced a new demonstration capability that is open to customers.
Cool.
So if a customer wants, for example, to go, they can create a login, they can log into this site, and they can say, I want to do an advanced workshop on Nimble. And it will give them a virtual Nimble array to work with in a virtual environment with all the tools preloaded for them to play around with, experiment. You could even do some API development in that infrastructure if you want, and they have some cookbooks on exactly how to do that, right?
That's great.
So things that they're providing for their customers and partners to use.
It's funny, the more we talk about the modernization of storage, the less we actually talk about the physical capabilities of the gear, and the more we talk about interoperability, the ability to programmatically access your resources, and like driving value back to the business and operations. Like that's a big part of it. So I mean, when you look at automations like for day 2 and things like that, I mean, can you give us, I guess, a couple of examples maybe of some of those day 2 operations that maybe are coming to the limelight now, or?
You mean particularly with respect to storage?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so like Nimble 3PAR, InfoSight, like there's a lot in those 3 words, especially when they all work together.
Yeah, and we'll have to talk about InfoSight another time, like I said before, because there's so much depth to that, particularly on the Nimble side. But just as an example, if you have, let's say you run into a situation where you're getting problems about storage performance.
Okay.
How do you know it's a storage problem?
Well, usually it starts with a political baton that gets set on the table, and then it goes between teams.
Yeah.
It's the SAN, it's the storage, it's your VMware, it's your Microsoft, it's your this, and everybody just
How
yells
would you
at each
like
other.
to be able to drill down into a VM in a very simple web-based tool and click on a button that says, show me the cross-stack analytics, and here's your VM's I/O latency, and it gives you a graph, and when you click on the peak, it will show you how much of that latency was host, VM infrastructure, and network.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, Nimble has it.
Yeah.
That's one of the pieces that InfoSight brings.
And then obviously it brings its own metrics, of course, to the table underneath that. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So now, how about this one? Let's say you are having a storage performance issue. Let's say your workload has grown and you're really starting to stress the cache in the array.
Okay.
What do we normally do? We go and we analyze that, we collect a lot of data, and we make some educated guesses as to what the growth rate has been, what do we think the growth rate's going to be, and maybe we now add some cache to the array.
Yeah.
Nimble takes that another step further. It's going to give you an alert. It's going to say, hey, we're noticing some latency increase as a result of the stress that's being put on the cache, and we're going to give you a couple of options. Based upon your historical metrics, if you expect your growth rate to stay what it is, you should purchase this part number to alleviate this performance problem. But if you think growth is going to grow a bit more, you might want to consider this problem. And here, by the way, is a comparative analysis of what your workloads would look like based on which ones you choose.
Sure, yeah.
That's just part of the product.
Yeah.
It's right there.
That's incredible. Seriously.
So there's cool stuff about how Nimble works as a product that gets bitheads like me interested and excited about storage I/O life cycles, and we don't need to go into that here.
Sure.
But let me tell you about one of the features that I see most often neglected in Nimble.
What's that?
You know how we talked on the SimpliVity side about how backup and DR is integrated into the product? Same thing's true of Nimble.
So Nimble A, Nimble B, you can just have simple replication between the two of them, just with that, nothing else?
So every volume that gets created on Nimble has what's called a protection policy assigned.
Okay.
And when you create a protection policy, you're defining when snapshots get taken of that. And the way that Nimble does I/O, snapshots are really zero performance penalty. They are true metadata snapshots in the truest sense of the word. They're because of the deduplication that also happens in the Nimble platform, you're really just getting pointers to original blocks. And blocks get invalidated when there are no longer pointers to them, right? And all writes are always sequential in new streams. So you don't get that performance headache that happens on traditional organizations that do copy on write and that sort of activity, right?
Sure.
So the protection policy that can be applied allows you to simply say, look, I want to make sure that I have the ability to recover any VM quickly.
Sure, yeah.
You apply a protection policy. I want a snapshot taken every 4 hours, and I want it to be kept for a week. Or I want it to be taken at midnight every day, and I want it to be kept for 30 days. Or both.
Sure.
And then you have your replication policies, and you have your snapshot policies, your production and your DR site. All of those basically built into the same set of data protection policies. Are they useful for granular recovery? Sometimes. But again, it's about capturing and automating that 80% of the infrastructure that consumes the majority of your time.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we look, back and even at other solutions in the market today, it's just not as simple, right? You need an extra appliance, you need additional software, you
Right.
need, things that, can split IOs, there's just a bunch of different things that you need, especially when you look at that. So to get a performant, easy to manage system it's not an easy thing to do. Right. But it's certainly been made easier with Nimble, and it's obviously a programmatic informant platform as well.
And so like I said, there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer to this. But again, it's a part of that digital transformation question. We want to get from where we are to where we need to be as quickly as possible. And what I find is most often the case, especially for larger infrastructures, is we don't need to try and find one solution that fits everything. We really want to look at that 80-20 model, because we want to spend 80% of our time optimizing the 20% that is most important to our business.
Yeah.
But here we have a set of solutions right from the OEM that have disaster recovery architectures built in that work, that will cover that 80% that the business needs to run, but you know what? It doesn't need an RPO of 0.
Sure.
Right? And we all know it.
Yep.
So let's get that 80% solved right now, and then we spend our time doing the best job of optimizing the workflow around those assets that really make our businesses run.
Yeah, and that's key. I mean, like the concept that we use in those lean value workshops is, that higher avoidance.
Yes.
How do you grow your platform by 2x, 3x, 5x with the same headcount? Those are real questions.
They are real questions. But what I think it's important for us to stress is, if an organization is really interested in digital transformation, it's because they're growing. And higher avoidance isn't the right way to look at it.
Sure.
Because the reality is, if you're growing, you're hiring. It's not higher avoidance. It's optimization of the hire. Because you want to simplify the infrastructure and transform the business in IT so that as you grow, IT becomes a value adder to the organization rather than just a cost of doing business.
Sure.
And now you can spend your hiring money on data scientists.
Sure. Well, I get what you're saying,
Right.
yeah, but and specifically in that case, I'm talking about IT administrative overhead.
Sure.
In other words, if you have the same team, like if you read a use case about T-Mobile and how they reinvigorated some of their platform development, they had a team of about 35 people managing an entire platform for a couple thousand developers. I mean, so
Sure.
that is what I'm talking about specifically when we say that higher avoidance.
Right.
So, yeah.
But here's the way I look at it. When I was, many years ago, when I was an engineer for an organization and not in the consulting business, one of my jobs was basically to deal with incident management. Deal with the problems that occur in the ecosystem. And also then architecting the solutions for the new business objectives that were coming in. Typical day-to-day IT operations, IT engineer work. the model that digital transformation offers to the people in those jobs is, which would you rather do? Be there under the gun when the problem's happening, fixing the problem, or trying to figure out how to get the right infrastructure in under budget because you got asked for this project from some business unit last week and they really want it next week, and you don't have all, you're shuffling all the marbles. That's a hard life. But what this digital transformation journey promises us is the ability to streamline that process so that we can have our IT folks, instead of firefighting and reacting, spending their time in the non-prod test environment, developing those automation pieces that enhance the business for tomorrow.
Right.
And get out of that firefighting.
Sure.
And you know what? When they're doing that, they're adding value to the organization. It goes into that higher optimization question. We want those IT guys to be creative, not reactive. And that's what the digital transformation journey can really get to, not just providing value to the business, but value to the people in IT.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I mean, the way you think about it, right, is, I mean, like, fires are always going to happen.
Absolutely.
But no matter what, if you have 30 fires simultaneously, how are you going to do anything else? How are you going to ever, like, clean the fire station? How are you ever going to do anything else to actually improve upon what you're doing, other than literally just like fixing one problem after the next?
And that's why getting from current state to the target state as quickly as possible is the most important part of that equation.
Sure.
Because if you want to say, I'm going to do this all with open source, it might take you 10 years.
Yeah.
But think of all of the reaction time you wasted by taking that time when you could have done it in a couple of months or a year using the right application of technology to your business process model.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's, and we're out of time for today, but that was a great look at, HPE, and their suite of products that they have that really simplify operations and management of technology and IT infrastructure as a whole, and really help, sort of get you to that point where your infrastructure can be like your own cloud and really reduce the amount of administrative overhead that's required for it. So that was a quick look at, Advizex, our MAP methodology, and some HPE technologies. So Mitch, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
And
it's a pleasure to be here.
We'll see you guys in the next one.